5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
You're listening to the GHT Overland podcast. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us on the GHT Overland podcast. This is where you get the greatest interviews and insights from overland travelers around the globe.
You are about to learn the basics to the advanced in overlanding, so buckle up and get ready for more adventure. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lisa. This is part 2 with Tim and Kelsey of Dirt Sunrise.
Now, last week we learned about Goose, all the details of their cooking setup, shopping in local markets, making hot, fresh bread as an overlander. We need to circle back around with Kelsey and get some more details. Kelsey, send us some information on that one. And a lot more.
This week, we dive right into tips on finances, border crossings, navigation, and all the finer details of Tim and Kelsey's setup.
I am super excited to get into part 2. Lisa, are you ready?
Let's go.
Let's do it. Let's the right foot on the go pedal.
Deeper on finances. One of the most common questions asked is, how can you afford to do what you're doing? Or I'm sure you've gotten the famous, you must have won the lottery or you're rich. Obviously, the real reason is, how can they do what you're doing? How can our listeners mimic what you've done so they can do something more than a weekend or a week's vacation overland trip, especially in Ecuador? So if you would give us your best insights on financing an overland trip like yours, along with any savings tips, budgeting during your overlanding, to help our listeners with some solid ideas to take action on immediately.
Yeah, this is a good topic. We do hear this a lot. We have locals thinking we must be very rich. In some of those times you have to admit, well, in a way, I guess, for what we can make per day in the U.S., they're probably right. But we are not at all. We have no one helping us. We're making the videos and we have a few Patreon supporters, and that's fantastic to pay for. I think it adds up to paying for our phone bill each month, which is amazing, right? That's great. But to save for the trip, for me, I was always one of those people in my 20s who could not save anything. It was, if I had a penny in my pocket, I went, oh, you know what I need? Long travel on my truck. And then, you know what I need now is those $2,000 shocks, right? Or whatever I had, it was just gone. Then I was working for banks and I lost everything when they went under. So I was cashing in 401ks, down to zero. So that was 7-8 years ago now, I guess. But that taught me you can always save, always. So, there I was in Arizona digging ditches and with a college degree, digging digits, making cash over, under the table. And you can always find a way to put $20 away and force yourself to live off what's left. So you really have to build that discipline. So for us, thankfully, we were both on the same page. So when we started saving for the trip specifically, we went at it really hard. We, if there was a weekend in our vacation days, all working, we're taking days off to work at Overland Expo. We're taking days off to go map trails. So every vacation and every weekend, if there was a way to make money, we did. If there wasn't, no worries. We're going to go mountain biking, camping. You don't want to make your life miserable, but we really went at the saving hard, and we knew that this was just one of those things that you're not going to be able to logically justify. You can't look at your finances and go, I can afford to do nothing for a year and travel in my truck. It's going to be scary. And no matter how much you save, you're going to think you need more than that to leave on your trip. Part of it is maybe that internal fear saying, I don't know if I really want to go. So I definitely need more money. I'll just keep saving, and I'll go when I'm rich, or I'll go when I have a lot of money. You just are going to have to go. And the amount you have is never going to seem like enough. So for us, that was a difficult part. Once you leave on the trip, I think you look at it a bunch of different ways, but I'm going to say 2 from the people we've met. You're either doing this as a 6-month, a year, a 2-year trip. You're blowing a lot of money. You're going to nice dinners. It's a treat. It's a vacation, right? The way we've looked at it from the moment we quit our jobs is this is a lifestyle for us, and this is what we would like to do. We're going to have to work, I don't know how many months a year. We're going to have to come home and work to keep this going, but that's how we're looking at it. So our biggest cost by far is fuel. If I could snap my fingers and have a diesel put into Goose, I'd absolutely do it. We'd save thousands at this point between the better miles per gallon and diesel being cheaper in all these countries, unlike in the US where diesel's often more expensive. So for us, I think just looking at it as a long-term thing has helped us a ton. We shop at the local markets. We really try and be frugal while we're traveling, but we also don't feel like we're missing out or denying ourselves anything. We will still consider doing the getting a guide and doing the big backpacking trip up the mountain or going to the Galapagos Islands, but we'll also kind of look at it and go, will we be back? Will we go and do that in the future? And if there's a chance we won't, or we're saying, I don't know if I'll ever be back here, we'll go for it. We'll spend that extra $200 on a guide that you're required to have, or whatever the case is. For us, I think that discipline and saving, if anyone's had to lose weight, if anyone's had to do any of those things that require self-discipline and sort of being hard on yourself, then you can save for a trip like this. We've spent far less than we thought we would, I think.
Yeah. I think a practical thing too, once we decided that this trip was something we were going to do, we started selling off everything. And I used, I think, Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist, and I put everything that, something like a candlestick that was worth $10. If someone wants to come and give me $10, cool. And that's a time suck for sure, but it all adds up. And I think that's a big thing that you can do practically.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in little side jobs like we were talking about, I think for the last 10 years or roughly since times were bad and the economy is bad, I've just said yes to everything. And Kelsey does the same. She's found deals on dirt bikes. And, some guy is getting a divorce. He's got 5 dirt bikes and he wants $1,000. Well, each one of them is worth $2. What's going on? So it might be a scam, might not be. Let's find out. And we've found some deals like that where we get them home, we rebuild the carburetor or whatever, and we're flipping motorcycles. And you go, gosh, for on the road money, that's 2 months worth of money we just got. We can be on the road 2 months from that little rough weekend of work or whatever it was. So that's kind of how we're able to do it. And we don't know what the future holds. And it's certainly a little scary when you look back and go, I had the health insurance, I had a 401k and all these other cushy sort of support things that keep you attached to your job. You have to let go of all that and say, yeah, there is some risk in all this. There is a risk that my retirement won't be as nice. But for us, the risk that we may not, we've had friends pass, I've had family members have cancer. You don't know that you're going to have this perfect retirement. I had a friend retire a couple of years ago. He was older than me, but within 3 months, he passed on at his house. So his retirement didn't happen. So for us, we kind of weighed the two. And my fear of not doing this trip was greater, I think, than the fear that I might not have as cushy of a retirement someday.
Yeah, all good points. So don't wait for that perfect retirement because that may or may not happen. Live your life today is some good advice. Now, do you have any, like a bigger picture view, a thought on how much should somebody go into a trip with this? Like how much should they save first? And or have you come up with like a daily budget that you try and stick with?
We don't budget too much. We've met a lot of friends back in the States or along the road who have Excel spreadsheets for everything. To me, that seemed a lot like work and what I was doing for work. So to me, we just didn't want to have to do any of that. We spend as little as possible, but we don't worry about a daily budget or how much. If we have a couple of days where we spent too much, especially when friends visit from the United States, they're on a trip for 5 days or 10. They're going to spend immensely more because this is a vacation. They want to sort of live it up and then go back. So when those situations happen, I say, I'm uncomfortable with how much we've spent the last few days. Let's make sure we're camping for the next few weeks. Unless we're really hurting or we feel like we need to be at an Airbnb and have showers and all that, let's camp more. And we'll make up that money in camping. And so I'll roughly estimate, wow, we've camped for a month and a half straight. We haven't even paid for a campsite. This is great. We've killed it. We've sort of made that back, and then we'll feel good and say, next week, let's go to an Airbnb for 3 nights somewhere and just relax and stay put. So we don't really look at a specific daily budget for an amount to leave. The comfort level was, I do not want to come home broke. We've seen some friends, a friend back in the day who worked for Overland Journal. He was doing all the great writing and working at this neat magazine, but he never did any trips. And so he finally said, you know what, I'm doing my own. And he quit, went off into Mexico, and kept traveling, and then sold his 4-wheel camper to keep traveling, and then sold the truck. And then he came home with not much. And it was tough. And I saw the toughness that he had to deal with when he got home. So for me, I wanted something in reserve. And for us, we have an old car and an old truck that are being stored at friends' places back in the U.S. That's sort of our safety net. That gives me enough comfort level. If we get home and we need some money, we could sell those and go, okay, we're okay, But I think for us, that's what I required. But we've met people on the road who are traveling with their kids and are like, no, we are traveling. We're playing songs in different towns for money. We're doing this for work. We're doing that. We're babysitting. We're teaching English, and they are shoestring budget doing it. So I think it depends on your comfort level. But for us, that's kind of where we sat in. I think knowing, let's say we spend $15,000 in this year of traveling. If we come home, if we spend every penny of that, or 20, let's say, if we spend every penny of that, are we going to be stressed out and worried and broke? And if that's the case, let's keep saving. So for us, that was kind of the comfort level is, let's say we spend $20,000 or $25,000 over this next year. How are we going to feel when we get home? The ability to come home and work at Expo and the Overland rallies and all these other things is huge for us, because we go home, we work, and without paying a mortgage, you realize the money you make from an event like that, you go, well, this is really going to last us, as opposed to if you had a mortgage and all these other big, a car payment, other costs, that would dematerialize very quickly. So for us, we've even taught people on the road. We did 2 different teaching sessions in Guatemala, just, teaching a local guide, all the tricks with winching and, plugging tires and airing down and driving, all that sort of stuff. And we made a few bucks. And so just always looking for opportunities like that have helped.
That's great. Gratitude. Thank you for getting into the details on that. That's super helpful. So let's go into navigation and communication real quick. Tell us about your communications and any tips from cell phone plans to SIM cards or whatever else you're doing to stay connected.
Yeah, we did a lot of research on cell phone plans, and what we came to was Google Fi, I think is what it's called. Not Google Fi. Yeah, I'm not sure. But that plan has worked really well for us. It just automatically switches through the countries. And so we don't have to worry about going and finding a SIM card and adding minutes to it. So that has worked really, really well for us. It's also an affordable plan where you pay for what you use. So there's months where we go, you know what, we need to upload a video via the cell service, and it's going to be a more expensive month. But we can also use that as a tool to help us save money and go, we're only using Wi-Fi this month.
Yeah.
So that's been really nice.
We also figured out, too, with this program, if you have 2 phones, they cap you at 10 gigs. And when I say cap you, I mean cap you for paying. You can go above that. But if you have 1 cell phone, they cap you at 6 gigs. So what we did is we both have these Google Fi Motorola phones that were, I think I got them on a deal for $150 each before we left. So cheap for a cell phone. Not cheap maybe overall, but for 2 new cell phones, not too bad. Then we paused Kelsey's service. And when she wants to use her phone, call home, use Instagram, whatever, I'll just turn my hotspot on. And so she's actually using my cell network. So we have her phone sort of as a backup, but she can still use it via the hotspot. But because we have only 1 phone on the Google Fi network, we're capped at 6 gigs and paying for it. So it's $10 per gig. You get to $60 with the sort of keeping your line open fee and whatever. It ends up about $82 to $84 is my bill each month. If I use,
that's the max.
That's the max. So
okay.
If I use, we've used 22 gigs because we uploaded, full HD videos that are 20 minutes long to YouTube via the cell network in Guatemala or wherever. So it's kind of nice. Now they do start throttling you. I think it's 17 or 18 gigs and slowing you down. But if you're uploading a video, hey, I got time. Just let it sit and roast through that cell network, and your bill's still going to be $84. But if you use 2 gigs, it'll be 20 plus the fee, so maybe $35 or something like that. So we found it's good to manage, and we just love that when we're worrying about border crossings and where we're going to camp tonight and how long is this border going to take and what stamps do we need and what copies do we need, my phone usually has a little vibration and it says, "Welcome to Ecuador." That's all you do. There's nothing. I mean, so it's been really nice not have to go SIM cards and then go pay more to the SIM card to get more credits and worry about all that. So it's not probably the cheapest option. Local SIM cards would probably be the best way to go. But we also did make sure that the phones we bought had two things: the external SD card, unlike an Apple iPhone where the memory is just included internally and you can't expand it. So we have a 132 or something like that gig SD card. So we've got all of our music, podcasts, all that, photos in the phone, and then next to it is a SIM card slot. So I could take out the Google Fi SIM card and put in a local one if I had to. So we have a lot of flexibility with that, but that's been a great way. We do have our ham radio in the truck, and in the United States, Mexico ham, but it's just not that useful on the road. They use different frequencies. Technically, it's illegal in most of these countries to be using ham radios, so we haven't used it. If we run into another American with a ham radio, great, we've got it. But other than that, we haven't really used it too much.
Okay. And do you guys use a InReach or a Spot?
Yeah, before the trip, we actually switched to an InReach. We were carrying a Spot all the time before, but we liked the capability to be able to communicate back and forth, which now Spot does make one that does that. But yeah, we use the InReach, and we really like that.
Yeah, I had a Spot for a good 10 or something years. When they first came out, that mapping company partnered with them and got some early Spots. And so I kind of saw what they were and went, this is great. This is my fail safe. When we like traveling alone, or I go out alone on a dirt bike sometimes, and I want that way to reach out. Okay, I fell, or the engine's not starting, or you broke a leg or something. And what do you do now, right? If there's no other alternative, are you just crawling somewhere? So I always liked having the Spot. What I didn't like was, what if we're somewhere in Baja and your friend finally shows up? It took him 4 days to come in and save you, because there's two types of sort of rescue buttons on all these devices. There's the help that goes to friends, and then there's the 911 help, which goes to rescuers. So if I hit the help button, he could come all the way down there and I say, yeah, I need a fan belt. That's it? Really? Come on. So having that two-way to say, I need a fan belt, part number, da-da-da-da-da, and somebody can actually get you that. Or we're totally safe, we're not injured, but we ran across a car accident and they're injured. So now your family, friends, everyone in the world knows you're not hurting, but you did hit the 911 because you do need assistance for someone else. So that specific message for me was the reason I switched to the InReach. And I do know the Spot has a two-way now as well.
Yeah, and I think the InReach, at least at the time before we were leaving, had a bigger coverage area, meaning Spot is really great for the U.S., but it might not be as
originally
well covered,
tailed off, in South America. I think they've fixed that and have a greater coverage area. But originally, it was one of my concerns is, the Spot, they'll stop working somewhere in the higher and lower latitudes.
Okay, very good. So let's go through some onboard necessities real quick. How much fuel can you carry, and how far does that take you? And then any tips you've got for calculating fuel needs.
For me, fuel anxiety is just one of those constants. So right before the trip, I built an 18-gallon auxiliary tank. I kind of look at it as just a big dummy tank, like a jerry can that's underneath the rear of the truck where the spare tire would be on a Land Cruiser. I just put in as much as I could, volume-wise, ends up being about 18 and a half or just under a half gallons. It's got a transfer pump, and it transfers right into our main tank. So it's very simplistic. It doesn't have a gauge. And so what we do is if the fuel's sketchy, we can put it into that back tank. It'll go through a couple filters before it gets into our main tank. Total smart. Between the two, we're at 45 gallons, but then we do carry a 5-gallon jerry can on the back as well. That has ended up being sort of our giveaway fuel. We've run into guys on motorcycles without enough fuel. Guy at a farm who couldn't leave his farm because he knew he didn't have enough in the tank to make it to town. Everyone's offering to pay us too. We never do, but it's just a nice way to help the people in all these countries that are helping us. But it's also nice to know I'm not giving up my reserve supply that's kind of hidden up underneath the truck. And so that 5-gallon can's been great. We also wanted some fuel, or the ability, I guess, to go and walk and get fuel. Let's say we had a leak in a tank, or we burned through all of it. So the range is so fluctuating. I don't worry about calculating it too much. In the U.S., it's much easier because you say, look, I'm going to be on the I-10 for today. Okay, that 50 gallons is going to be maybe 1,000 miles, or it's going to be immense. But down here, it is, because of the topes every half mile, you're on the gas and then you slam on the brakes. You on the gas and you slam on the brakes, and you can barely even get to the top gear in your transmission. So our top speed until we hit Panama, Colombia, was 62 miles an hour. We never got faster than that the whole trip. And even then, it was not, we were cruising at 60. We got to it for a moment, and then there was another giant tope around the corner. So, you're driving slow, you're in low range. Often we spend days in low range, and then you're getting single digit miles per gallon. So it's so all over the place. We just have so much fuel that we don't have to worry about it. We haven't had much of an issue with quality, except, the premium or the good gas a lot of times is not that great. So the truck will ping. And so we did bring along a little octane booster and some Techron, bottles just to help clear things out if the fuel's kind of dirty and is gumming up the injectors. But for us, we just wanted to have more than enough, and we've never had a worry with fuel, and we always seem to have enough to even shop around and find that cheaper gas station. So.
Okay. And then how much water do you guys carry, and how are you filtering water?
So in Baja, you're often not finding a local water source. And so if you find a supermarket, they have the 2.5 or even the 5-gallon jugs. So we hate to buy it, but that's an easy way to get a bunch of water and fill up all of our tanks. We have an internal tank that's from Australia called a Flexi tank that's in the wasted sort of fender gap in the right rear of the truck. So it's not really taking up any internal space, but you can fill that up internally. Then on the back of the truck, we've got a 5-gallon Scepter can that I put a tap on, just a normal brass tap from like Ace Hardware. I was sure when I did that it was going to leak, but that was 12 years ago and hasn't leaked. So we that's our primary sort of thing for washing dishes. It's nice to have a tap. When you turn it on, it just flows quickly. Then we have the Lifesaver jerry can, which is a filtration system. And I know the Traveling Together Journal, that's actually who I saw their YouTube video. So before the trip, saw them using it, went, hey, let's check this out. And it's worked great for us. It leaks like you wouldn't believe. From the day it was new, it leaked out of the 2 caps. But in general, it's not leaking where it's pouring all of your water out. There's just always a seep out of it. So that's my only real complaint. Otherwise, it's great. I walk down to the local river in the Amazon, fill it up, pump it, and we'll just have a day where we're making water because it is very slow. So you're sitting there, you pressurize the jerry can, and it'll trickle down into one of the other cans, and you'll just let it go. And if you hear it starting to get slow, give it another pump. And then as soon as that one's empty, you go back down to the river, and we'll just fill up all the tanks. So we have 7.5 internally in the Flexi tank, 2 5-gallon cans on the back of the truck. And then we also have that Swiss water bag, which is the really heavy-duty rubber. The first 2 fills or 3 fills of that, the water tastes a little rubbery, like you were drinking out of a hose or something. But it's lost that, and it's been really nice. So I guess total that puts us at just over 20. And we generally try and keep them all pretty full. We don't know when we're going to end up in an area without water. So anytime we're right next to a stream, we get that Lifesaver can out and start making water.
And the nice thing about the Lifesaver, too, is it not only filters the impurities, but it also has a charcoal filter. So the water actually tastes really good.
Yeah.
Have you had to switch out those filters at all?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, the main filter is supposed to be good for, and I can't quote it too well, 20,000 gallons or something to the point where in no way in a year or 2 could I probably wear the main filter out. The charcoal filters, I did get an extra packet of them, and we haven't had to change it out yet. We didn't really even use the Lifesaver until we were in Central America, Mexico, in the first few months of the trip. It just always seemed like those 5-gallon, sort of like the Sparklets exchange ones we'd have at home, were everywhere because no one's drinking the local water. Now that we're down here, most locals are drinking the tap water everywhere. We might get a little sick from it depending on what town we're in or where we're at, but you don't see these giant, very cheap 5-gallon jugs of water. So we've just started using the can exclusively no matter where we're at. And the water is just so good everywhere we're at because you're either in the jungle or you're up in the mountains and you can see where the melt is happening and coming right to your camp. So we've really enjoyed just
isn't
getting
it
water.
Cuenca that has the best water?
Yeah, something we were Googling. Can you drink the water in Cuenca? And it says some review, they tested the water and said it was one of the best water sources on Earth. So I was like, okay, I guess.
Yeah,
right.
that's probably
But there's still
good.
could be some bacteria in it that your stomachs aren't used to. So even here, even at the Airbnb, we just fill up the jerry can and just have it running, and we've got water whenever we need it.
Yeah, we learned about the Lifesaver from Matt and Amy with the Traveling Together Journal as well, and I think that that's really something super smart to have. Do you guys use solar as well?
We actually don't.
Okay.
I all for solar. It's very expensive, and we're leaving on the trip. What I used for years and years, instead of a dual battery system, I think it was actually Mario at Adventure Trailers who turned me onto it. It was a battery brain. It's a low voltage disconnect. And so you get this giant, the Group 31 battery, a really nice one. And before it's too low to start the truck, it'll kick off. For the trip, we did go ahead and do dual batteries, but both giant Group 31s, nice batteries. And so we had now, I think, 5.5 days.
Yeah.
So 5.5 days of running the fridge, music, hanging out is when my dual battery system will kick in and save us. Now, the backup to all that, we also carry a micro start. So I like having layers of sort of backups. And the micro start we don't touch for charging phones or anything. If we're off backpacking, yes. But if we're in the truck, the micro start sits there charged, and it's the backup to the whole dual battery system if it were to fail. So for us, that's kind of how we manage our system. And we don't tend to sit still for 5 or 6 days that often. And if we do, maybe we'll take a drive or something like that to charge up the batteries. So for me, it's just not necessary. But I mean, absolutely. Someday I'd love to add, a couple 100 watts to the roof and then know that things are always topped off, always good to go.
And keep in mind, I'm using a MacBook Pro a lot of the times. So included in that 5.5 days is me charging a laptop pretty often, which takes a lot of power.
Yeah, I think you could cook
impressive.
off your laptop after you've been editing.
Yeah. And then the Group 31 battery you used, do you remember what the amp
hours?
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't. I've misquoted, I know. But essentially what I've always used is the Odyssey brand, or when Sears was using the Odyssey brand and rebranding them as Sears Platinum, I'd use those. Yeah. I think now the ones we have are called Enersys. But again, what I was kind of looking for is who really made it. Was it Deco? Was it, whatever brands? I can't remember the main 3 companies that make most of these batteries. And so I've essentially had the same batteries for the last 10 years that are Group 31s, but the brand, oddly, and the color of the battery has changed a lot over the years. So I don't off the top of my head remember, but it's one of those where compared to back in the 90s when Optima was kind of the top battery, it was something like each Group 31 was double the cold cranking amps or the amp hours of my old like red top Optima for comparison.
Okay. And we talked about your fridge a little bit before early in our conversation. Any tips you've got for our listeners in selecting a refrigerator? What should they be looking for in anything that you've learned maybe that they should stay away from?
For me, it's the company behind it. So back when I had a Waco, it was actually the one that I think was used in the old Overland Journal first test, when the magazine was new. And Waco is amazing. Eventually, one day, the fridge stopped working, and I was emailing with them. And these nice Aussies sent over all these parts, a new motherboard, of this, that. I soldered it in, sent them photos, and it still wasn't working. They said, forget it. We'll just send you another fridge. So that was worth its weight in gold to me because, you got this $5,000, $6,000, $8,000 fridge, right? And the company behind it is all that really matters when things go wrong. So to me, that's the most important thing. We have the ARB now, and ARB's usually really good about supporting any of their products. And so I like that. To me, that company behind it's almost the most important thing. I have had a lot of friends have good luck with the off brands, and Expedition Portal and these forums have lists of, here's a new off brand. It's sort of a copy of whatever major brand. To me, National Luna has always been the sort of gold standard, but you can do a lot with the money that you pay for to get a National Luna. So I'd say those are the best. But I've had an Angle also for, I think it was 14, 15 years old. And eventually it may have lost some of its charge. It wasn't keeping things quite as cool against the 110-degree days in Arizona, but it never broke. It always worked. And so that one's now sort of relegated to our FJ40. And, all these brands I think are pretty good. But Angle, ARB, and National Luna seem to be the top of the heap to me. The Dometics are really good. They're rebranded Wacos, I still believe, I think, from back in the day. But you got to think about the company behind it and go, did I get a good enough deal that if this breaks, I know they may not back me up? So that's kind of how I look at it.
And then as far as packing it, we find that in these countries, we don't need to refrigerate things like eggs, certain vegetables. So we save space by not having those in the fridge. And before this fridge, we had a smaller one. I don't remember what size it was.
Yeah, that was the Angle. Yeah.
But, not keeping quite as many beers cold. And like Tim had mentioned before, you take one out, you put one in. And so just being a little more careful on space with little things like that help a lot.
Yeah, but when it is full, I do notice it has a much easier time. Trying to refrigerate a bunch of air is tough. Now, if you put a bunch of warm water or warm sodas in there, it takes a while for it and a lot of energy for it to cool it. But once it's cool, it really seems to hold it. So we try and keep the fridge pretty filled to the brim, and it does seem to run less often that way.
Okay. Any specific recovery gear you use or would recommend that our listeners make sure and have with them?
I'm a huge believer in sort of less is more. And in a lot of the classes we teach, a lot of our problems off road can be solved with some manual labor and a shovel in a couple of hours. And so, definitely a good shovel. And if you have nothing else, a static tow strap. So at least if you're stuck, you could pull someone out. If someone else is stuck, you have a chance of pulling them out. Because it's sort of what we do, we have a lot of the other fancier gear. We carry Max Tracks, and we've used them to help a bunch of people's vans. When they're stuck in the sand, we run into a lot of travelers, surfers and stuff who love the beach, but aren't really the off-roading type. And so they get stuck in the sand. So we've used those several times. We carry a recovery ring, which is sort of like a pulley block or a snatch block, or it has so many different names. But essentially it's just a ring that works in the same way on a soft shackle. We've pulled trees out of the road in front of us because we had that ability to do an offset winch line pull. We've pulled a guy's Nissan Patrol that he drove off sort of into the jungle back onto the trail. We've used our recovery gear immensely more than we thought we would, but always really to help others.
I think an important small factor, but something that you can't do much without is bow shackles or soft shackles, and we carry both. But without those, you can't really attach the strap or anything to anything. So that's helpful. Yeah.
You just assume that, the other day we're on the top of the parking lot, sort of just before the Refugio on Cotopaxi. And some guys came over and said, hey, our tour bus is stuck and we've been here for a couple hours. We're stuck in the cinders and we've dug a hole. Can you get us out? Well, there's not recovery points on the front of an old, I think, Toyota bus. And so having a bunch of soft shackles and hard shackles to get under there and look around and go, what can I pull off of, was nice. And so for us, the soft shackles are expensive, but they're definitely light and they pack well. A couple of bow shackles are great because sometimes you're attaching to something that's got a knife edge on it and you'll just cut up your nice, expensive soft shackle. So we like having a lot of variety. So we have a little bit of everything: winch line extension, kinetic strap, static strap. We're definitely a little overboard, I think, on that. But part of it is we're going on purpose as remote as we can, and we're trying to go to the places that aren't visited as often. And it just makes us feel like we're having sort of our own unique trip, I guess. But I wouldn't say you need all that. A lot of people are like, I need to get this before I go. A shovel, again, and a couple of hours solves almost every problem you have. So, I'm a big advocate of not necessarily bringing all this. For our big trip, we did bring it, but at home, I don't carry Max Tracks. For the last 25 years, I haven't needed them. But when you have them, you'll find a use for them, and they do work really well. But all that big, heavy gear and pull pals and stuff, you're just loading your truck down, and then your truck has more issues. So it's kind of a compounding thing where I think a lot of us just carry too much because we all have that off-road anxiety, right? We don't want to get stuck. We don't want to get stranded. And so we carry a tool for everything. And
I think one of the biggest tools as well, the teacher in me, is knowing how to use all of that gear, right? Because you could carry as much recovery gear as your truck could carry, but if you don't know how to use it or use it properly, it becomes dangerous and maybe probably not as useful. So,
yeah, good tips. So road stories are always a favorite. What's a favorite road story of yours? And maybe a situation where you were nervous going into, and then how did it turn out for you?
We've had so many amazing people help us. When we were in Colombia, kind of near the border of Venezuela, and we had been driving and looking all day, and I think it was actually New Year's because I remember looking for gas and all of the gas stations were closed. So we eventually just decided, we need to stop. It's kind of a late night. And we just could not find a road to camp on. We ended up going down a little track and again running into, a very, very poor farmer. And we asked, is there a place to camp? Is it okay? And he goes, oh yeah, I think it's fine. And he kind of pointed both ways. And so we chose one, and parked, and probably a half an hour later, as he was walking back to his house, he went out of his way to stop by and go, this probably isn't the best place. Like, this is a path that a lot of the, people crossing the border come this way. So you might have people pass at night, and I'm sure they're fine, but it's probably more dangerous. Why don't you come up to my house? And of course we took him up on that because we found that those situations, it always works out well when you take people up on their kindness. But we ended up camping and meeting his family, and he had 3 adorable kids who were just so excited to, they were reciting their numbers and colors in English and looking at pictures. And
they had that book about Abraham Lincoln, like and they're like, see, and they're showing it to us like, see, he's one of your guys.
Yeah,
but there's so many good people that we find when we engage with them. We just have such amazing experiences.
Yeah, I think that's the main theme, I guess, for us is that we've never been disappointed. One I can think of is in Guatemala. We were headed up into the Petén, the big jungle, the Pass to Call, and all the sort of paved or even nicer dirt roads, and you're in the true jungle, and it's the wet season, and everyone had told us, don't go. It's the wet season. You won't make it. And I said, look, we have all the gear. We know what we're doing. The first time we get super stuck and we spend the next 4 hours winching just to turn us around and get out, we'll call it. The first time things get bad, we'll call it. And we're just going off into this remote jungle. And of course, there's no tracks and there's no people around. We're on a track. We're on a road, not blazing a new path or anything, but no one had been out there because it's the wet season. And so this time of year, all the caretakers of these more remote ruins get food either pack muled into them or helicoptered in or something. So we're off-roading along, and we both know, like, is this going to work out badly? And it was scary. And it was like kind of that jungle adventure. We keep going and going, and eventually we make it to these ruins we were hoping to get to. And the caretakers were the nicest people in the world. They're cooking tons of food and invite us in. They're pointing over to a raft. It's a bunch of 55-gallon barrels lashed together. And he says, normally this time of year, that's how you get here. And we're like, yeah. And he goes, how was the river crossing? I was like, what river? or the lake, a pond or something, he called it. And I was like, what pond? And he goes, right back there. What are you talking about? I said, oh, yeah, there's a little water. It wasn't bad. And he goes, well, that's the pond or the river that we have to float across to get here this time of year usually. And watch out, there's a lot of alligators in there.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, great. But so there we are sitting at camp at this remote ruin, and then it starts raining. And the whole night you're just going, I'm not going to sleep well tonight because in the morning, is there going to be a river? Do I now live out at this ruin until it's not the wet season? It was terrifying in a way, but everyone was so nice. Everything was worked out. We drove out the next day. It was a little muddier, and it was just one of those confidence builders, I think, to go, we're really far from home. We're really remote, but we've got radios. We've got the InReach. We've got all the tools and the skills. Let's go for it. Let's not try to do anything stupid, but it was really rewarding to kind of go out there, check off that bucket list item of seeing these ruins sort of untouched and unrestored, and know that, you're one of, 40 people that make it to these ruins each year, and most backpack in. That was just super, super cool to me.
That is awesome.
Okay, I have to chime in here because I was watching a video, and I want to say you were with a gentleman. Was his name Vince?
Yeah.
Oh, that was in Mexico when they're going to the top of the hill.
Okay, so it literally made me want to jump into the screen of the TV and start helping Kelsey with the winch.
That video is so tough because Tim feels so bad, but I literally chose that I wanted that position, because we both have this training. We're interchangeable. I can drive, I can winch, he can winch, so that was a hard one to edit and
relive.
And it was quite a frustrating day or 2 days.
I think that was a really tough one. I agree. Looking back at that one, I want to jump in and just be like, why did we turn around? There was people up on the mountain, and when we got there, they didn't have jackets, and they were in the rain, and they didn't have water and food and all that. So it was good that we pushed through, but it was really frustrating. I don't need to always jump in and be the leader or whatever, but it's tough when you do know how to get things done or what you're doing, and you can't always force somebody to listen. But I also have a hard time not helping them too, right?
It becomes a safety factor as well.
Yeah, so it was really tough day, and for us it just would have been one of those, all right, let's slog it out. We're going to winch constantly, and we'll be up this mountain in 2 or 3 hours. but all the other factors kind of came in, and dealing with all that was just really tough. And, that's actually the morning then. So we didn't sleep much that night. And the next morning, we were the only truck up there. So we knew on the way down the hill, we had to recover 2 different trucks and get them back onto this muddy track. And Kelsey's just amazing. It's nice having a partner that, and we talk about this in our like couples classes, but we do harder trails together than alone. And most of the people in our classes, we find they go, well, when I'm with my wife or my spouse who's not the off-roader, we take it easy. We just kind of do some graded dirt roads. And once that person though is trained up, they're your teammate, and you can take on tougher things with them than you would alone. And so when I'm alone, I'm much more conservative. But knowing that I've got somebody who can just jump in the truck and I say, okay, ease it forward or winch in, winch out, and she knows the hand signals. I mean, it's just it's like clockwork. So it is really nice.
Yeah, it's such an asset to have a team, and traveling, especially solo like this, because a lot of times we are just us.
Yeah. So that was a tough night, but I got to say, in the end, we made some great new friends out of it, and we ended up doing 2 training sessions because of that night, and people who were there watching us and went, I'm realizing with all the traveling we're doing, I'd like to know all that. So we ended up making a few bucks on the trip, and so it ended up being a great thing, and we've got some great new friends out of it.
Yeah, and we probably wouldn't have done that if we were by ourselves, honestly, because it's such a weight on the truck and all of our gear, and unless there's a pot of gold at the top of that mountain, there's no reason to go.
I'll hike up and get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those things where I just look at things like that. We're on a big trip. This is a big asset. This thing's expensive.
It's our house.
Let's never see if we can never scratch it. Of course, that night we got one, but
it was a very impressive episode to watch. I'm glad that you guys went through the editing process for that. I'm sure for you two individually it was tough, but for the viewer, there was a lot to learn, and it was a great episode to watch.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So any helping others, doing good, or philanthropy that you focus on while you're overlanding? And then also, I don't know which one you guys want to cover, I'd like to talk about the award that Tim got, the Exemplary Service Honor from the U.S. Department of Interior for creating the Four Peaks pickup. So whichever one of those you want to talk about would be great.
Sure. On the road, we don't really have, a specific philanthropy-focused thing that we're doing. When we see a need, we'll fill it. Giving gas away, those sort of little things make a big difference to a lot of these people in remote places. Water, food, candy for kids.
I think for us, we just feel instantly indebted to people in all these countries because everyone is so nice. It's overwhelming, and so you're just always looking for some way to give back a little bit. And it's just one of those things where it's, like the farmer that Kelsey was talking about who he stayed with that night, I had an extra pocket knife and a hat. So his hat was like, just falling off his head. It was so in pieces, a baseball cap. And I was like, I got a brand new baseball cap in the truck. I'm going to give him that. And his knife is old. And I was like, hey, can I give you this knife as a gift? And I don't know, just any little way that I go, okay, I feel like we helped someone here because they're so nice to us and helping us. We're trying to do that sort of thing. For the Overland or for Four Peaks pickup, that was, it's one of those things that to me, we were off-roading one day and I saw so much trash, dumping sites, all that sort of stuff, just outside Phoenix. There was even an FJ Cruiser, and this is right about when FJ Cruisers just came out, burnt to the ground, shot up, and I was like, what is the deal? And I posted some photos, and the guy might have been being sarcastic, and I think he was probably, but he's like, what are you going to do about it? And so, well, okay, I probably should. Yeah, good point. So I went ahead and started organizing, and next thing I knew, I had 60 sign-ons for different forums, and I found that was the best way to get the word out. And so I was on any sport you could think of, mountain bike forums, dirt bike forums, shooting forums, every off-road brand you can think of, from the Bronco Club to Land Cruiser Club, the Xterra guys, and I was just posting all them saying, hey, this is this cleanup. If anyone wants to come out and help clean it up. And the pictures were so compelling because it was so trashed and it's such a beautiful area that so many people came out. And then, the next year, all these companies were donating giveaway things. So then the next year at the end of the event, we had, we're filling these big 40-yard long dumpsters with trash, and companies are giving thousands of dollars in stuff, lift kits and sweatshirts, hats, all kinds of things, gift certificates or whatever. And so we're just handing that out to all the volunteers each year. And it was at a time when the economy was in the dumps, and I'd been laid off 4 times, I think, and was barely finding any sort of work. I was laying block and digging ditches. It was just a time where that was the most positive thing going on, and for me. And so I think almost everyone I know today has something to do with that cleanup. And it went on for like 4 years, and then I needed to step away from it because it was taking up, the 6 months prior to it. Every night I was online for a few hours answering questions or trying to get the word out or trying to get free water donated to us and a lunch donated to feed all the volunteers. And so I handed it off to another off-road club, and they still run it and are still doing it. And it's super cool. But it was just one of those things that from that, I've met so many people, and almost everyone I know, from Overland Expo to, all these other overland off-road companies, and even just nice people that have nothing to do with any of that, none of the off-road world, but I met them because they showed up one day there. So it kind of was one of these things that got a ball rolling, I think, for me. And it was a neat thing. And then, after that last year, the Department of the Interior gave me this nice award. So that was cool.
That's nice. So great job, Jim. That's awesome that you took the action to do something.
Thanks.
So this has been a lot of fun. Anything that we've missed?
I don't think so.
Don't know. I've never done a podcast before.
That's awesome.
So let's wrap it up with some fun facts about you.
Okay.
What keeps your co-driver occupied on long drives?
We like to listen to a lot of podcasts. Neither of us are sleepers as a co-pilot. So, conversations and listening to stuff, we really don't have much of a problem staying awake.
No, I think both of us are mild control freaks. And so we trust the other one driving, but when I'm in the passenger seat, going to sleep is never on my mind. I'm always like, okay, what's the next song? I'm playing DJ now, or what's the next podcast, and what's the next book on tape? And so we've had a book on tape. Yeah. There you go. No one even knows what that is anymore.
That's awesome. As long as it's not an 8-track, Tim.
Exactly. What's on 8-track? So all these things are great. You get tired of the same old music. We do download a lot of music, but for us, listening to somebody reading a book, or we're in Panama, so we're going to listen to The Path Between Two Seas, great book on the Panama Canal. And we're camping, looking at it, listening to a book about its history. I mean, this is cool. Great. And so as we got into Colombia, we're like, okay, let's listen to some books about Colombia and maybe some cartel stuff, just because, not the brightest of histories, but, still interesting stuff that you go, this happened right over there, or, oh, that's how this walled city, ended up being there versus somewhere else. And it's just so interesting to learn as you're going along.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Do you play any musical instruments on the road or around the campfire at night?
No, we thought about bringing like a miniature guitar or something like that. Both of us are not good at it, but, we were hoping that was something we could learn. But in the end, we just didn't have the space for it. So no, we don't have any instruments. We just listen to other people play music.
I generally sing to Kelsey a cappella, put her to sleep.
It's beautiful.
Oh, very nice.
What's your favorite drink in the morning to get you going?
Coffee.
Strong coffee.
What's a favorite place that you found to get coffee?
It changes too much for us. So I don't know if we had developed a favorite place because, even one part of a country to another, the brands are different. And for us, that's the first thing we get going in the morning, though. I mean, even if we're not that hungry for a breakfast or anything, that coffee's going and it is good and strong. But it has been tough to find good coffee, which I understand sounds completely insane because we're going through all the coffee countries. But 99.9% of it is exported. So some of the best coffee we had was actually in Nicaragua.
Mm-hmm. And it was an American.
It was an American who had a coffee company there and a plantation. And they said, look, you can get our coffee, only place in Nicaragua, at the airport. Or you can get it on Amazon or this store in the U.S. And so much of it's going to the U.S. and other countries. It's actually tough to find the good coffee. We have found it, though. In Guatemala, Byron gave us a bag of one of his friends, and that was amazing. Yeah. So we found some amazing coffee. But when you go into a little store or you go into a restaurant, you say, I'd like some coffee. They bring over a hot boiling cup of water, literally a coffee cup that's just clear water in it. And then they put the instant thing next to it with a spoon in it. And you go, oh okay. I didn't like.
Not what I had envisioned.
Yeah, the only place we've been able to find like to, buy a cup of coffee like you would at Starbucks or something is in college towns. And I guess, that generation, it brings in more coffee.
Yeah, pro tip, if you like good beer and good coffee, you find the college towns, because just like a kid in the United States, they're on their phones and they know what's cool and they know what's good. And there's a ton of coffee shops and local breweries.
Nice. Those are great tips. So what's a favorite beverage at night to wind down after a long day on the road?
We drink a lot of beer. Wine when we can, hoping as we get further south, we'll get some cheaper, better wine.
That's another one just like the coffee, though. So you think we're getting close to where a lot of this wine is produced, and we thought it would get cheaper. And there's some good deals, but you'll look at a bottle that's from Argentina or somewhere and go, wow, we're not far from there. I bet you this is a great deal. And you Google it, it's cheaper at Costco in the United States. So wine's nice just because when it's cold out, man, cold beer does not sound good when you're on top of a mountain at 60,000 feet or whatever.
And what's your favorite beer?
For me, gosh, on the road, what do you think? I don't know. Since we started the trip. Now, my favorite beer in the United States is one called La Cumbre. It's actually out of New Mexico. And they make an IPA that I think is amazing. So when my buddy visited 2 weeks ago, he's unloading his bag and he brought us some GoPro mounts and, the new credit card. And then he starts pulling out these tall cans of this really hard to find beer that he had smuggled down.
Like
so that was a treat. Along the road, every country sort of got its national brand, and that's really almost all you're going to find. Sometimes there's 2, sometimes there's 3 brands, but it's sort of their Budweiser. So in the college towns, you'll find the local beer, and it's a really nice treat, I guess. But when you're on the road, it's just kind of, all right, what do we have here? Oh, Gallo. Okay, that's what everyone drinks here.
Yeah, you can't really be too picky.
No, it's just whatever you see.
What is your best advice to aspiring overlanders like us?
Go now. Really, I think for us, I know the fear, and I see it so often in the classes. That may have been what finally pushed us to go, is seeing these people, these classes going, yeah, I'm going to go probably about 10 years or 5 years, or I got to save up, or I got to do this, or I need to buy that, or, oh, my dream truck's 60 grand or 100 grand, so I got to save up. And the people we're meeting on the road, and now we're realizing with us, you just need to go. There's not going to be a right time. There's always going to be an excuse, many, many excuses, actually. So for us, just go and go as soon as you can. Throw a little caution to the wind. Prepare as best as you can, but don't worry too much about it and overthink it.
That's great. So how can people learn more about you and what you're doing and keep up with your travels?
The base would be our website, which is dirtsunrise.com. And then there's links to everything. We have Instagram. Obviously, YouTube is a big source. We try to post at least one video a week. I think. Yeah,
and for now, I think we're excited to be back in the U.S. as well and visit some friends and family. We'll be back teaching at Overland Expo West, the Overland rallies, and then we'll do some of that military training and other stuff on the side. But we're excited to pop back after. It'll be about a year by the time we get home, and just see some friends and family and stuff. So if anyone's around Arizona or any of those events, we'll see you there. That's pretty much it.
And are you going to be at the Northwest Overland Rally this year?
Yep, we'll be at the Northwest and the BC, I think, a week later.
Okay, very good. Any more information you'd like to give or useful resources that our listeners should check out?
I think, as soon as you Google it or as soon as you go online, you'll find a lot of the sources. Wiki Overland's good, not always the most updated information. iOverlander is essential to doing a trip like this. I say essential. I mean, plenty of people did these trips before these existed. It's just really nice. I would caution to not rely on any of these like a crutch, though. We meet a lot of people that go from one iOverlander to the next, and so you're sort of following someone else's trip. We like to have a spot sort of as a backup in our minds, and then we hunt for our own remote spot somewhere on a mountain, and sometimes you just don't find it, and so you end up at a spot. And the great part is you're likely to meet another Overlander there, and that's our favorite thing. Some of our best friends now are people we've met and have maybe hung out with for 2 days, right? And we're still talking to them. They're ahead of us or they're behind us on the road. So we're either telling them our favorite spots or they're ahead of us telling us their favorite spots. And it's great. These people are so like-minded. these are the people that will keep you inspired and keep you going, because sometimes people at home, I don't think intentionally, can kind of give you a few digs or say, I think, maybe jealousy, or maybe they're scared for you, in the trip you're doing. And so they can be less than 100% positive sometimes. The people you meet on the road, though, they're absolutely in the same frame of mind and get it, right? So I'd say that's an important thing.
That's cool. And where did you guys get the name Dirt Sunrise?
I don't know. We were trying to figure out what to call it. Back in the day, I always called my blog and things SOAS, because being from California, everyone loved California and called it SoCal. And so I was like, nah, that's, Arizona's cool too. So I'm going to call it SOAS. But that was,
nice.
Kind of a bad name, actually. Sounds weird. And so for this, we were just, everyone's Overland this and Overland that. And I just wanted something that just represented simplicity, and I didn't want to try and sound high end, or I don't know. We just
and we did some research on what names were taken. What would solely come up with us, and
that was huge. I think for us, when you put the two words together, is there anything else on the internet that's already called that? And everything is taken. So to me, the Dirt Sunrise, we were talking about it, and we always talked about how for those weekend and week-long trips, that first night doesn't seem like you're on vacation, doesn't seem like you're overlanding, doesn't seem like you're camping. It's that first morning you wake up in the dirt. The other day you may have worked the day and then you did a long drive to get to Moab or somewhere. But that first morning when your feet are in the dirt and you wake up and that sunrise comes up, that's when the trip begins to me. So that was the idea behind it, however convoluted.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for your time. We are humbled that you've given us such an amazing look into your world, experiences, and knowledge. Safe travels and adventures to you, and we hope to catch up with you again in the future.
Thank you so much. We're honored to be a part of the podcast, and see you on the road.
Absolutely. Tim and Kelsey, thank you. Have a great day.
Cheers.
thanks.
That first morning you wake up with your feet in the dirt and watch that first sunrise, then you know you're living the overland life.
That's awesome. I love it. So how awesome was that from experienced Overland Expo teachers currently down in South America living life? That was a real treat to hear all those stories from their YouTube videos, like firsthand, directly from them. So they were telling the story and I was envisioning the video that we had already seen.
Yeah.
Like that was just super cool. And another recommendation for the Lifesaver jerry can. So if you've been thinking about looking into one of those, there's another recommendation. And they learned it, quite interestingly enough, from Matt and Amy of the Traveling Together Journal. And I know that Amy found that online and she was super excited about it. Amy, you're a rock star. Way to go. More people are benefiting from your research.
And I thought the Google Fi was an interesting and simple solution for self-service.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something worth looking into. And let's see, what else? Using their external jerry can as kind of giveaway gas. I thought that was a super interesting idea. And I really enjoyed Tim going through all the details on their battery electrical setup. So, Lisa, pop quiz time.
Oh, I'm not so good at these.
I know. I like to surprise you.
Oh, boy.
What's a tope?
I don't know what a tope is, but I know what a toupee is.
A toupee?
Toupee?
Oh, it's like a hair thing?
Yeah, I can get you one.
You're funny. Tope, what's a tope?
No comprende.
Tim referenced it several times. We learned about it from Travis from Yeti Ambo the first time. There's speed bumps. It's right in the middle of the freeway.
Speed bumps?
Yeah.
I don't like speed bumps.
Or sometimes they call them dead policemen.
What?
I think I looked it up on Google. That's how I found it. I was like, tope, what is that? What is that? And I Googled it so that I had the upper hand in the quiz.
Well, I guess you won this quiz.
I did the research. Tim and Kelsey, thank you so much. We are so grateful that you took the time to connect with us and share all of your stories, your tips, your experience. It was absolutely amazing to connect with you. So thank you.
It's a good idea to visit the show notes page on our website at ghteoverland.com/podcasts. Select the Dirt Sunrise episode, and all the details and helpful links are already there for you.
Yep, and be sure to send your questions, suggestions, and feedback to ghteoverlandpodcast@gmail.com. We would love it if you would connect with us on social media. You can find us at GHT Overland or GHT Overland Podcast. Either one should pop it up. And be sure and share this episode with your friends who enjoy travel off the beaten path. If you remember from last week, we gave an invitation to join the podcast.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, so send in your questions or things that you would like to talk about. You can send them on the DMs or an email. Either way, works just fine, and we'll try and work that out.
If you enjoyed the episode, it would mean the world to us if you did two things to help out. Rate and review the podcast, that's one, and subscribe. Giving the GHT Overland podcast a little iTunes love. Thank you, and we will see you next Thursday for a brand new episode of the GHT Overland podcast.
Where are we headed to next week?
We're headed back to where the wild animals roam.
Boy, that's open.